Hey, what's up, guys? So today I want to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Obviously, everyone's talking about Spider-Verse right now. It's the new thing. It came out. It's the big flashy project. But I kind of feel like in the art community, the Super Mario Bros. Movie kind of fell under the radar. I didn't see that many people talking about it, but I actually think it was one of the most beautiful 3D films I've seen in years. So I'm just going to riff on the Super Mario Bros. Movie and kind of shoot from the hip. I feel like I have things to say, even though I'm not entirely sure what I have to say. I think ultimately I just want to show my appreciation for the work that's being done. And anytime there's good work being done, guys, like whether it's like plumbing, like anything, any job in this world where people clearly are putting an effort, they're doing good work, they know their skill, I respect that so much. And the reason I respect good quality work in anything is because when you actually go to do it yourself, when you actually sit down to make an animated film, do a drawing, do a painting, do a 3D model, you realize how much harder it is than you thought. It takes a lifetime to develop the skills that these artists, these programmers, these writers, these directors, all these people, it takes a lifetime to develop those skills. And it is hard work and it's not easy. And I respect that. And I respect good work everywhere. So Super Mario Bros. Being kind of a more traditional 3D film in the sense that it's what you would call the Pixar style, right? It's just kind of 3D, but something about it was so beautiful in a different way. It was like seeing a 3D film for the first time. Now, I need to preface by saying a couple things, okay? I'm not one of those guys that's kind of like blinded by franchises. I am not into comic book movies. I'm not like a devoted fan to any particular, even Super Mario Bros., which I'll talk about here in a sec. It's not like I follow or have kept up with like every single game or whatever. So generally speaking, I'm fairly impartial. And I love this movie. I don't honestly think that there could have been a better 3D interpretation of what the Mario universe and world could look like. To me, everything was perfect. Before we even get into it, and I'm sorry if I'm like all over the place, but I really am just shooting from the hip here. You need to understand and appreciate how difficult it is to work with a major licensed company like Nintendo, especially on an IP like Mario. I used to work for Capcom, and we worked on a Mega Man game, and we also worked on a Smurfs game, the little blue people in the village. And I can tell you that working on an established property like those, they are incredibly specific with their designs. Every single detail of their characters needs to be approved and go through hundreds of iterations just to get the right proportion, the right color, the right line thickness, the right motion, the right silhouette, and ultimately the right appeal. It has to be on brand, and artists will kill themselves trying to get that right. I remember we were getting feedback directly from Japan on some of the Mega Man stuff, and man, they ripped it apart every time. There was red notes everywhere. So what I'm really trying to say is pray for those artists because they probably went through so many iterations of Mario himself, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, all the little creatures of the world. It's incredible. And the thing is that it paid off. It's hard for us to hear the screaming that probably happened, but it's evident to me that because this movie is so well executed and the designs are so well captured and translated into 3D, that team polished that thing until it was smooth as glass. And that would be before animation. Like that's just the design of the model. Animation would be a completely different beast because it's very easy in animation to go off model because of deformation and speed and squash and stretch. You will go off model intentionally to sell the animation, but that then has to be critiqued, probably drawovers over tons of frames of animation because you could very easily go off model on Mario in animation. So all throughout the film, every frame has to be approved as well. So it's a monstrous task. I know the movie was only like an hour and a half or something, but to me, it was fine. I didn't expect it to be too long. Absolutely incredible work. I was blown away. I loved every single creature, Toad, the donkeys, the little fish. Oh my God, the little fish in the bag. That thing cracked me up. It's so cute. The little shy guys. Sorry, I don't really know like all of the names. I know the Mario movie was made for kids of today, but Mario was made for the kids of the 90s, and that was me. So you got all these 30 to 40-year-olds geeking out over this movie as well, and it's just a ton of fun for us to see. As a kid, this would have been my wildest dream to see Mario in this high image quality and fidelity and motion. I never thought Mario could look this good. Because, when I was introduced to Mario, he was probably like 10 pixels wide and 10 pixels tall. And don't even get me started on Yoshi. Yoshi was my absolute favorite. This is my Elrond moment where I get to say, I was there 3,000 years ago in a Walmart watching Super Mario being played for the first time. And I really can't describe what it was like to see real-time 3D for the first time, where, we were so used to flat images in games. But seeing like a 3D world that you could turn the camera around and see your character jumping around at different angles, it was immersive. Like you felt like you were being sucked into the screen back in 1996. So yeah, man, I played the hell out of Mario 64 and Mario Kart. I mean, these are one and the same, and the fact that they used the same assets for like the castle and stuff really tied those two games together. So yeah, back then I was a Super Mario mega fan, just like every kid of the 90s. And just because I don't think there'll ever be a better time to just tell this story, I'm just gonna say, back then my parents didn't have much money, and I never thought we'd be able to afford an N64. They were considered expensive at the time for like a kid's toy. And my parents did this awesome thing where they were like, it was Christmas. So N64 came out in September, I believe, and Christmas came around. They'd given us all our little gifts, wasn't much. And then they did the thing where like, oh, I think there's like one more behind the couch. Take a look. And so you go and take a look, rip open the paper, and it wasn't the N64. It was a copy of Mario 64. And I said, oh, cool. But what do I do with this? And they were like, you silly goose. And then they pulled out another box. And dude, it was the N64. Oh my God, man. It was literally probably, in my childhood, that was one of my favorite memories of my childhood ever. What I'm trying to say is, yes, obviously I have some sentimental attachment to Mario 64. It's a great game. It was a great children's game. And it also touches on something that I think is kind of missing from today. This is a separate video in itself, but the topic of simplicity. I think things are too complicated nowadays where, the villain needs this motivation and like everything has to be designed. And what is this messaging that we're trying to like, blah, 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 all this stuff. Back in the day, man, dude, look at the concept of Mario by itself. The guys are like two Italian plumbers going into a magical mushroom land trying to save the princess from like this lizard dinosaur Bowser creature. Like, you don't need too much. And that was epic, right? That was immersive. They had the plot laid out without really like, being too serious about it. Nowadays, I think we go too deep, and I think we underappreciate and undervalue simplicity. Anyway, I love that thing. But bringing it back to 2023, Illumination absolutely killed this, and it really had a different 3D look than anything I'd seen prior. I have seen parts of Minions, like I've seen it, all the trailers, I've seen maybe like 5 minutes here and there. So I've been exposed to Illumination's work just passively, and it's always been kind of on my peripheral. So I can't say with 100% certainty, but to me, Super Mario Bros. Is their best work. The movie is lit, or maybe I should say well lit. Literally, the lighting is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. The way they did the blasted light, the glows, the halos, all the lighting is absolutely incredible. The two things that really, really crushed it for me was their lighting and their surfacing. I'm not kidding when I say that when I saw this movie, it made me want to be a better artist. I was like, holy shit, I need to learn how to do better surfacing. And surfacing is like the materials of things. So if you look at like the denim of their overalls, or like the fibers of their hats, or Bowser's skin texture, like the little, reptilian scales or whatever you call it. And not just like obvious things, but really mundane things like the rust of pipes, the wood and the stone. And the overall look dev is so polished and tight, guys. Like the hair fibers, the eyes, the shaders, everything is so well done. And I don't even have the technical terminology to explain like how gorgeous the background art is. Like, well, first of all, I can say the background art is gorgeous. Like, it's incredible. The environments, the mushrooms and the grass and the hills and Bowser's land. I would love to just know more about the technical setup. But, with the thing with these studios is if you want true depth, like for artists learning about this stuff, you have to either find them deep in the articles of software or interviews, like for example, I mentioned Houdini a lot. They'll do interviews with their clients on how they use their software. The problem is that from what I understand, the minimal research I've done on this for Illumination is that Illumination uses their own in-house tools, right? They're not using software that is on the market that they buy and license for their studio. They actually have programmed and written their own tools. And from what I understand, they've been using their own renderer for like the last 20 years. So I guess we'll talk about rendering. And just so that we're all on the same page, guys, the renderer is absolutely critical for pulling off how your film looks. It is the massive oven that every ingredient has to go into. I know I have a tendency to speak in hyperbole, but Illumination made probably one of the greatest illustrations of what the animation pipeline looks like. So I'm not going to go through like every step here, but obviously we start with a script. From the script, we start to visualize that. So we have concept art and storyboards. On the side, you have R&D, which is like your research team that's figuring out the tech behind everything. All that stuff gets filtered down, the storyboards. Once the shots are kind of figured out, we start breaking into what do we actually need to design for, what's in camera. Editorial, character modeling, that's what I specialize in. Set modeling, those are like the backgrounds. And then we move on to character rigging, character surfacing, set rig. So those are the things that allow for movement and animation. and the surfacing is kind of like the look dev. From there, we go into layout, which is we have the pieces. Now we need to really lock down the camera and get the camera figured out just right. Main character animation, followed by crowd animation, animation fixing, hair department, technical layout. There are so many steps to this process. I'm not even sure what Awk 1 is. I think that's probably some kind of in-house review. Matte painting is used heavily in 3D films. Not every single thing is 3D because ultimately a 3D thing seen from a distance just becomes a flat image. So matte painting is very useful. VFX, CFX, which is character effects. So like anything that is not the character that needs to move. Accounting, Awk 2, which I guess is some kind of review pass. Lighting, that's the big one, and compositing. So lighting and compositing, they work together. Lighting goes into the render. The render spits out stuff that compositing uses to balance, make tweaks. And then we go into stereo, which I guess is for 3D glasses. And finally, it arrives in front of the audience in the theater. But it is a massive pipeline, and you can see why these films take thousands of people to make. Just backing up a few frames here, you can see though that like everything goes into the render. The render is everything. It's the thing that calculates the light. It takes into account the color of the object, the surfacing of the object, how things bounce off. It really is very technical, and it has to do with pixels and rays of light. I've talked about renders on my channel before, but again, some of the popular renders out there today, we have Arnold, which is default for Maya, Chaos Group's V-Ray, we have Redshift, Blender, you guys have Cycles, there's Octane, Maxwell Render, Houdini has Mantra, and obviously one of the most famous renders for production at Pixar that's been in development since the earlier late 80s is RenderMan. But then a lot of studios have their own in-house tools, which, they don't even need to talk about unless you actually work there. Some very simple research led me to some basic articles which talked about the render that they use at Illumination. They call it MGLR or McGuff Ligne Render. So I didn't know this, but Illumination was an animation studio out of Paris, France, and they were acquired. They seem to be called McGuff. I'm just going to read this. Once they began cutting the story together, though, the cutting room moved to France, where all McGuff would build all the assets. All the CG happened in Paris. This is for the first Despicable Me movie in 2010. Healy says, "This was the first film I worked on since 1995 where I did not have to build a pipeline. For every other movie, I spent so much energy on how the whole thing would work. What McGuff was able to do was improve the tools and concentrate on functionality. We built on top of the pipeline, but they had a pipeline in place. That pipeline consists of Autodesk's Maya, the Foundry's Nuke, Tweak's RV, and many proprietary tools, including a ray-traced rendering engine called MGLR McGuff Line Render, an asset manager, Inc., custom rigging and animation tools, and numerous Maya plugins, including tools based on caches for crowd animation. We've had our own rendering engine under development for 15 years now," Mahi says, "and a whole rigging team, some of whom have been here for 10 years now." And this article was written in 2010. That was 13 years ago. So everything that they're referencing is like over 20 years ago. It's amazing. It's just amazing to me, guys. Like this stuff is so technical. It's so advanced. Like saying you're going to start up an animation studio is like saying you're going to build a second planet. Anyway, that's pretty much all I really had to say, guys. The movie was absolutely beautiful. I think my favorite parts were like the part where it turns into a side scroller in the beginning when Mario and Luigi are running to the apartment. And it kind of gives you that side scroller feeling. That was so amazing. That was a great homage and tribute to, the old side scroller games. That was a very self-referencing moment, but it actually worked, it just really worked well. As a nice nod to the fans. I maybe skimmed some reviews of the film after the fact. A few people said that it was bad. Like, okay, I get it. It's not like gonna change your life or anything. But to say the movie was bad, dude, are you kidding me, man? This movie was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I think kids will like it. I think people who are nostalgic for it, like me, will like it as well. Again, what do people want? Like, you want this to change your life? Like, obviously, it can have better writing and all that stuff, but it really didn't bother me. The voice acting was completely fine. I didn't even think about the voices, man, honestly. And I saw a comment that said like, oh, the Mario Bros movie is just a reskin of Minions. As if a Minions reskin is even that bad a thing. Like, what that means, guys, is this studio has experience animating hundreds or thousands of these little yellow characters. That is called having experience. And experience lets you make new things. And so, yeah, maybe they did learn a couple tricks, and it does kind of feel a little bit like Minions. But that just allows them to push further and further and further. I would trust the studio that has experience animating hundreds and thousands of little characters, has found solutions to those technical and logistical challenges to execute and deliver on a movie that has those exact same challenges. It was good. It was great. And they've established all the heavy lifting has been done in this film. And by that, I mean like the models are done, the assets are rigged, everything is ready to go. They've got all the puppets and now they can put on a second play. No problem. And you just know that there's going to be more of them because Yoshi. We didn't even get to Yoshi. They were saving that for part 2. I remember finding Yoshi at the top of Princess Peach's castle in Mario 64. It was one of the best moments of my life, guys, when you see Yoshi in 3D at the back there. So it'll be just like that. We're going to go back and we're going to find Yoshi. Guaranteed, whatever pipeline they used on the Mario movie, they're going to be using for a Zelda movie. Maybe we'll get a Star Fox movie. Anything is possible. The last thing I want to leave you with, the last kind of thought here, guys, is that these movies are made by a lot of people, a lot of artists that are incredible. Absolutely incredible, top of their game, top in the industry. One of the most shocking things that I learned when I joined production, you realize that some of the best artists in the world have no online presence. They have no Instagram, they have no ArtStation, they have no website. They don't need it because they jump from production to production and their work is not public until it's out, and they have work endlessly. In fact, one of the single best 3D artists that I met a few years ago, he last posted on ArtStation like 6 years ago or something. Like, he doesn't post, but when you work with these people on a daily basis and you see what these guys are producing, what these people are capable of, it makes you realize that there's a whole world of artists that are incredible that you don't know about. You don't know their names, but they are the ones putting up world-class art. Maybe that's not inspiring, maybe that's discouraging, but it shouldn't be. It means that you need to keep grinding in silence the way that they did and keep honing your craft and just try to be better than yourself. Stay focused. That's my message for today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Had fun talking about Mario, and I'll see you later.